After 2 years of mentally preparing for this movie to be terrible, I'm still in complete disbelief of how truly bad it was. The Last Jedi destroyed this trilogy. It ruined everything The Force Awakens had built up, from the plot to the characters, and left us with absolutely nothing to build on for the third movie. But like many of us, I was still extremely curious to see how they would try to save this rotting trilogy, and I got my answer. The Rise of Skywalker was a complete disaster. A movie so rushed and poorly edited that you don't even get a single moment to understand the context or the stakes of any of the scenes. Not even the visuals can be appreciated when the entire movie is on fast forward. This is Star Wars on meth. There's no tension, no meaningful character development or interactions, no suspense, no immersion of any kind, and no information on the state of the world, nothing. Just CGI and bright lights. One of the greatest examples of a soulless movie you can ever see. And just like The Last Jedi ignored The Force Awakens so Rian Johnson can make his fever dream, J.J. Abrams ignores The Last Jedi and basically attempts to shove two movies into one, and it resulted in this clunky, disastrous Frankenstein of a film. It's basically a rap battle between an idiot and a madman, and Disney let this shit happen. And so, we have the disgraceful end to the Skywalker saga. Allow me to summarize this abomination as well as I can.
How did it come to this?
The movie starts off with a slow motion scene of Kylo killing a bunch of randoms in order to retrieve the first of the movie's many MacGuffins, a Sith Wayfinder, in order to find the Emperor, who is somehow fucking alive, making Vader's sacrifice in the original trilogy pointless and ruining the climax of Return of the Jedi in the first 2 minutes of the film. What a fantastic start. And before you can get a chance to let that sink in, Palpatine explains Snoke was just a clone, and he has been the one inside Kylo's head this entire time, essentially making Snoke meaningless, just another character butchered by Rian Johnson, and they were forced to pick up the pieces and resurrect Palpatine out of nowhere. And now that Kylo knows the voices in his head were all lies, he has absolutely no reason to remain on the dark side. But because we need shit to happen, the movie ignores this, and he is ordered to kill Rey in exchange for more power. Even though Kylo is the supreme leader of the First Order, a faction that can literally pull ships and armies out of thin air. This is so stupid on so many levels, not to mention the fact that they don't even bother to explain properly how Palpatine is alive. When we all saw him get blown up to pieces, they just didn't care. We cut to the Falcon where Finn and Poe are chilling with Chewie, playing the old board game from the original trilogy, and immediately irritating me because this is a clear example of how much chemistry they have together and what a stupid mistake it was to rip them apart in the last movie. They find out the First Order has a mole and they transfer the info to Leia. And as soon as they transfer the information, a group of fighters are on their tail, which means this is either a huge coincidence or they took a chess break in the middle of a chase. We get to see some pew pew action as Finn and Poe make their escape. And finally, the moment we've all been waiting for. Rey is shown floating like fucking Goku in his prime, surrounded by floating rocks, putting the final nail in the coffin for anyone who argued against her being a Mary Sue. She floats down pretty much effortlessly, establishing that she can basically fly. We never get to see her use this ability again, it was just for the visual. And after already cementing herself in the first two movies as one of the most overpowered characters of all time, she apparently has finally done some training. Off screen. With Leia. Which is interesting when Luke, the Jedi Master, apparently had nothing to offer her, and even Yoda claims she has everything she needs, but Leia is the one to pass on the knowledge for some reason. Even Han didn't have a single thing to teach Rey about ships. Instead, she taught him.
What'd you do?
I bypassed the compressor.
Huh.
I love Princess Leia and all, but this attempt to make her the Master would have worked a lot better had you not shit on the original characters already. Not to mention the fact that Carrie Fisher passed away years ago, and instead of having some respect, you cut up old unused footage and CGI'd the rest to force her into this movie, which led to awkward, botched conversations and just an overall disservice to her legacy. Just let the woman rest in peace, this is awful. Rey tells Leia she isn't worthy of Luke Skywalker's lightsaber, and she will earn it one day, and gives it to Leia, putting a smile on my face. And literally like 2 scenes later, Leia gives it back to her. How do you put this in a movie? I don't understand. We get a few banter scenes with Finn, Poe, and Rey, and Finn reveals there's something he wants to tell Rey. And before Rian Johnson ripped them apart in The Last Jedi, I actually had some interest in their relationship. Unfortunately, they never bring it up again. The Resistance finds out that Palpatine is back because he was kind enough to broadcast and warn them, instead of just blowing them up from a mile away. Nobody bothers to ask how he's alive, even though the first movie the Force was a myth, and they cut to Rey saying she knows how to find Palpatine. You need a Wayfinder. Something Luke searched for years, and then they cut to a desert planet where Rey finds it in 5 minutes. But before she goes there, they have another big emotional hug with Leia, just to try to trick the audience when they barely know each other and they have had nothing more than a few lines of conversation on screen. Yet they keep hugging, everyone's hugging. I don't want to skip forward, but I swear you see Rose hug Chewie at the end. Have they even met? We get what could have been a decent scene as it resembled the Empire Council scenes from A New Hope, which I love, but ended up just reminding me that even though he has the mask back on, even though he looks kinda cool, it's still Kylo Ren under there holding back tears.
Where's your mask?
When discussing what to do about Palpatine, one of his men asks, what does Palpatine want in return? Seems like a logical question, right? And Kylo just strangles him to death, slamming him against the roof and raging for no fucking reason. This scene works so much better in A New Hope, since Vader's religion is being openly disrespected and he wants to prove a point.
Your sad devotion to that ancient religion has not helped you conjure up the stolen data tapes, or given you clairvoyance enough to find the rebels' hidden fort.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Enough of this. Vader, release him.
As you wish.
They attempt to recreate the scenes without understanding what made them work in the first place. This is what I mean by soulless. They just copy and paste, they don't create. Back on the desert planet, some pig child monster is giving Rey a necklace and wants to know her family name. And Rey says, "I'm just Rey," beating the audience over the head with the obvious fact that a reveal of some kind is coming, and setting up an even stupider scene. Kylo uses the Force mind link to communicate with Rey and manages to find out her location. I have no idea why they're still connected when Snoke is dead, and of course they don't bother to explain why. He pulls the necklace off of her neck through the Force, scans it, and then pinpoints her exact location on the planet through a fucking necklace that the pig child just gave to her a second ago. And then what feels like 5 minutes, he's already there. This is how Abrams writes. The man doesn't give a fuck about your brain. We get a few quick shots of the Knights of Ren, another thing that Ryan forgot to add to his movie, and JJ was forced to slap into this one just so people would shut up about it. Unfortunately, we get no backstory, no dialogue, absolutely nothing. Just a throwaway line where one of the guards awkwardly says, "Hey, it's the Knights of Ren. Pretty cool," just in case you forgot. They don't even appear to be Force users, which was part of the main reason people were so interested in them. They're just sexy stormtroopers, that's basically it. Our crew bump into Lando and find out from him that there is a crashed ship that may have a clue to the Wayfinder out in the desert. Apparently Luke and Lando searched the ship already, but Rey insists they need to do it again because they didn't have her. That's the plot of this movie, people. We gotta find the thing to get the other thing so we can do the thing. It makes no sense. It's like a video game with shitty aimless side quests to get XP. And just like earlier with Finn and Poe, as soon as they get the info, they are suddenly under attack. There's no chance to think or absorb anything in this movie. It's just so rushed. We get some more pew pew action that has absolutely no tension when you know the main characters are not going to die to some random stormtroopers, and you spend the entire scene wondering why Rey is firing a pistol when she could literally destroy them with the Force. Then I remember this is Disney Star Wars, where we don't use powers for practical reasons, just for cool visuals. Out of nowhere, they fall into quicksand and Rey seemingly lets all of her friends die horribly instead of using her powers to save them. But fortunately, they fall right into a cavern that leads right to the ship they were looking for. How lucky. They end up finding a Sith dagger that has the location to the Wayfinder on it.
Palpatine's location was so important to be kept secret that you could only get these holocrons. Why would you inscribe on a dagger the location of the holocrons? And if you're going to scribe it down, why put it even on? Because it's... Why a dagger?
So let me make this clear. They find a new thing that's going to help them find the original thing in order to locate the thing to do the thing. Are you following me here? Luke tried to find this fucking dagger for years and Rey literally falls on it. What the fuck is this shit? 3PO reveals that he's forbidden to translate it, so they need to find a droid hacker because the movie didn't have enough side quests. We needed one more. Then out of nowhere, a giant monster sneaks up on them. Now how a droid, 2 adults, a Wookiee, and a god didn't notice a giant monster in the room right next to them is beyond me. But before you can think about any of this foolishness, Rey walks up to the monster, raises her hands, and heals its wounds. And it thanks her by breaking the wall, creating a path for them to escape. How lucky. So this movie is pretty much a joke 35 minutes in, and Rey is basically Space Jesus at this point. Like, how could you possibly think giving her this power, this ridiculous ability, is gonna make any sense? This retroactively makes the entire Jedi Order retarded. How did Yoda not figure this shit out in 800 years? Why are you willing to ruin the logical consistency of all the previous movies just to prop up Rey? Why are you doing this? Our heroes are forced to find a new ship since apparently the First Order will be waiting for them by the Falcon, once again ignoring the fact that Rey can just crush them all with one hand. Finn tells Chewie to tell Rey to get her crazy ass back on the ship, and Chewie somehow gets captured like 5 seconds later. Rey senses Kylo coming. Instead of leaving for the safety of her friends, instead of warning them, instead of even telling them he's here, she walks out and decides to do a dramatic force run along the path of Kylo's ship, rather than just moving to the side.
It's like, so Rey, you think Kylo's on the way, yeah? She's like, yeah. It's like, so why don't we get out of here? It's like, no. Like, oh, okay.
I'm sorry, what is she doing?
Why is she... Okay.
I don't think you're gonna outrun that thing, Rey.
Rey, it's not worth it. Rey, just walk to the left or right.
Why would she do it like that? Why would she...
I thought this would be banned from movies after Prometheus, but I guess not. Meanwhile, Kylo, whose goal is to fucking kill her, isn't shooting or even using the Force. He runs her down only to get countered and cut down by Rey. His ship crashes and blows up. He's clearly dead. Yet he appears perfectly fine a minute later. He's not injured, he's not dirty, he's not even breathing heavy. It's like it never happened. And not only do none of them look for Finn and Poe, but Rey somehow doesn't sense that any of this is going on, even though they're in an open desert and she's like 100 meters away. Not to mention the fact that she has the fucking Force and she just sensed Kylo coming from an even further distance. There is no consistency in this film. They just don't care. Finn screams for Rey to help as the transport ship is leaving with Chewie, and Rey stops the goddamn ship in mid-flight using the Force, while Kylo struggles to stop her. It's scenes like this that piss me off the most, because this is a scene I would have loved to enjoy, but my investment in these characters has been completely ruined. There's no limit to Rey's power, so how can I appreciate anything she does? It's just too easy. None of it is earned. And anyone who thinks I'm being too hard on Rey, check out the next scene. Rey and Kylo are having a Force tug of war, and it's dead even. Then Rey accidentally destroys the ship using Force lightning, revealing another ridiculously overpowered ability she learned out of fucking nowhere, killing Chewie and countless others in the process. This could have been the first opportunity for Rey to have some consequences, some adversity, to actually fail at something, to actually make an attempt at being a flawed, relatable character. But they ruin it all 2 scenes later by showing Chewie is fine and he was on the other ship. False alarm on that character development, nothing to see here. They run into an old partner of Poe's who puts a gun to his head and says she wants his brains on the floor for leaving her, and then Rey smashes her and her whole crew. And while still out of breath, in pain, and on the ground, with a lightsaber in her face, she literally turns into a different character and says, "Not that you care, but I think you're alright." It's not just pig children, giant worms, and Kylo. Even random bounty hunters who want to claim a fucking bounty and have beef with her friend, even they can't resist the charm of Rey. She sets them up with the droid hacker, and she even asks Poe to come away with her after just threatening his life. How do you go from threats of murder to chit-chat? How do you put this in a movie? I don't understand. 3PO, after being hacked, translates the dagger and gives them the information. And for the 3rd time, as soon as they get the info, the First Order shows up and attacks them. Fuck you, you lazy movie. This trick is getting old. Bounty Hunter chick gives Poe a Dorito chip that will give him access to the First Order ship. Once again, why are you being so helpful when you wanted him dead a second ago? This makes no fucking sense. But we need it to happen for the next scene, so it's great. Our heroes land right on the ship and shoot their way in. What the fuck happened to security measures in Star Wars? Why is this movie like a video game on easy mode? Do you hate stakes and tension, Disney? What the fuck is your problem? Rey uses a mind trick to find out Chewie's location from 2 guards, while Finn and Poe shoot out the cameras, and Kylo doesn't sense any of this. We get some more pew pew action in the hallway with Poe, Finn, and Chewie as Rey fucks off somewhere after sensing the presence of the dagger. Poe gets hit in the arm and they all get surrounded. We cut back to Rey, who easily finds Kylo's room, and the dagger is just conveniently sitting there on the table. How lucky. Kylo Force Skypes Rey, and again, I have to mention this, I have no idea how they're doing this when Snoke is the one who linked their minds and he's dead. And instead of attacking her, he tells her whole backstory for no other reason than J.J. Abrams being a lazy prick who had no idea where else to put this. He says her parents were nothing, but they chose to be, to protect her, essentially retconning The Last Jedi. And Rey starts spazzing out and attacks him, even though she wanted to know this since the first fucking movie in this trilogy. Why is she reacting this way? But at least I can appreciate this scene as a big fuck you to Rian Johnson. We see Finn and the rest of the gang lined up to be executed, and Huck shows up and says he wants to do it himself. He shoots the Stormtroopers and reveals, "I'm the spy," in case the audience is too stupid to figure it out. We all know Stormtroopers are worthless, but this is just insane. He's standing right in front of them. It's 3-on-1, and somehow they don't even get off a shot. to the point where Hux has to ask Poe to shoot him so it looks believable. Hux says he did it so Kylo wouldn't win, cementing the absolute desecration of General Hux. He went from a competent leader in The Force Awakens to a comic relief clown in The Last Jedi, and now he's an absolute idiot, taking the worst possible approach to treason I've ever seen. We cut back to Rey blowing stormtroopers away with the crossbow, and I ask once again, why isn't she using the Force? Kylo shows up, and after literally swinging a lightsaber at him for bringing it up 2 seconds ago, now she's suddenly all ears. Palpatine wanted her dead because he knew what she would become, and Kylo says, "You're his granddaughter. You're a Palpatine," and that they can kill him together and take the throne.
What the hell are you? No! No! No!
What? Why the fuck didn't he kill him in the first scene of the movie? Why did he bother track down Rey at all? Why did he wait an hour into the movie to tell her this? Why are you the stupidest fuck in the galaxy, Kylo? Poe and Finn show up in the Falcon and Rey makes her escape, vowing to destroy Palpatine and avenge her parents. Hux tells the new commander that they escaped and he gets shot in the chest and dies. They crash land on a new planet and we see the wreckage of the Death Star. You know, the one from Return of the Jedi that literally got obliterated, yet somehow it's here, practically intact. But before you can process how stupid that is, Rey pulls out the dagger and lines it up with the Death Star's wreckage, and this pinpoints the exact location of the Wayfinder. How? Why? Who the fuck knows? Who cares? Directly after this, a bunch of random people on space horses show up and they say they have been expecting them, and Rey is the last hope. She says that she can get them to the Death Star by boat, but not now, the seas are too rough. And we find out that her and her group have escaped the First Order, just like Finn, and they have a bonding moment. So this girl is now the third love interest for Finn, who clearly they have no idea what to do with. And apparently he is no longer a special case since plenty of people desert the First Order. This scene is interrupted when Poe notices that nobody has seen Rey, and they all rush out to the water and they see Captain Rey, Master of the High Seas, navigating her way to the Death Star by herself on a boat that she has never driven, not to mention the fact that she has no experience sailing since she grew up on a desert planet. But it's Rey, so none of that matters, she can do whatever the plot requires. She explores the Death Star and immediately finds the throne room that is somehow still intact. She looks at a door and it just randomly opens because she's Rey, and leads directly to the Wayfinder because, like I said, this video game is set to easy mode. Then she has a vision of a dark version of herself and they scrap it out. Evil Rey pulls a Bilbo Baggins and flashes her dirty Sith teeth at Rey, knocking her back into the throne room. And she drops the Wayfinder on the ground. And it's picked up by fucking Kylo Ren, who somehow made it all the way to this planet, onto the Death Star, into this room at the exact moment that the plot needed him to be. How convenient. And once again, Rey doesn't sense a damn thing. Kylo destroys the Wayfinder, and so they fight. Back at the Resistance, we get more awkward Leia scenes where they show her face and then Maz Kanata has to say Leia knows what must be done. It's so forced and poorly done, just another reminder why they shouldn't have even had her in the movie if they need other characters to say her lines. Rey and Kylo are now fighting on the top of the Death Star wreckage. Finn screams Rey for the 1000th time in this trilogy as he comes to help her, and just like the very first scene he laid eyes on her, Rey doesn't need or want his help. She force pushes him away, almost breaking his neck. Stormtroopers and Kylo, she won't use the Force, but when it comes to Finn, who's supposed to be her best friend, no problem, she blasts him. Rey and Kylo resume their fight, and finally, for the first time in the whole trilogy, Kylo is getting the upper hand. But before he can land the crushing blow and spear us all, Leia out of nowhere distracts him with the Force, causing him to drop his weapon, and Rey stabs him in the chest after catching it. And then Leia dies after overdosing on the Force. Quite possibly one of the most disrespectful things I've ever seen in a movie. When you consider Carrie Fisher's real-life issues with drug addiction and the context of her actual death, it is absolutely ridiculous that they would essentially have her overdose on the Force when she shouldn't have even been in the fucking movie. A tragically sad end to an iconic character, which seems to be the theme in Disney Star Wars. Rey uses her new powers to heal Kylo and then steals his ship, leaving him stranded. And at this point, I'm just done asking why these two do anything for each other.
Ben? Don't do this, Ben.
Finn, Poe, and Chewie go from fixing the broken Falcon to suddenly being back at the base mourning Leia. And for some reason, Kylo is still in the rain on the broken Death Star. How? How is this even possible? What is time? Does anyone care? Kylo hears a voice and he turns around and holy shit, Harrison Ford actually got out of bed to show up for this shit. He deserves a medal. He gives Kylo basically the same pep talk from The Force Awakens that got him shanked, but this time it convinces him to turn good for some reason, and he throws his lightsaber in the ocean. It's interesting that Kylo says you're just a memory, confirming that this can't be a Force ghost. Kylo is basically imagining this entire conversation, and it's literally what redeems his entire character. Adam Driver has done nothing but his absolute best to try to bring this character to life, and what he's got to work with is absolutely pitiful. I feel so terrible for him. Kylo Ren deserved better than this. They both did. Back with the Resistance, we find out that Dio, the Me Too droid, has had the info we've been looking for the entire time, and they don't even need the Wayfinder, essentially making half the movie and all the side quests that we just suffered through pointless. It cuts to Porg Island where Rey has landed and destroyed Kylo's ship. We are forced to hear the stupid squawk of a Porg one more time as Rey decides what to do with the lightsaber. And Force Ghost Luke appears out of nowhere and catches the lightsaber, and the first words out of his mouth are, "A Jedi's weapon deserves more respect." This is J.J. Abrams' not so subtle way of saying fuck you Rian Johnson, since Rian literally decided to do the opposite.
And that little annoyed look to her, Mark. Great, I cut it.
He then dismissively says, "What are you doing?" And Rey says she's never leaving this place. She's doing what he did. And Luke tells her, "Nah man, that was stupid. And so is Ryan. Get out of here." He then tells her there's something she should have. We get a flashback scene showing that apparently Luke trained Leia, and she had her own lightsaber. And for the second time in this trilogy, we get to see Luke bested by a half-trained pupil. Disney is literally willing to rewrite history just to make Leia the hero, and it's just so forced. He tells her 1,000 generations of Jedi live in her now, and to take both the lightsabers. Go kill Palpatine, you got this. And in the next scene, we see something Rian Johnson was just too stupid to add. Why the fuck didn't he do this in the last movie when he was still alive? And go save the Resistance and be the hero that we all came to see. I will never understand why Rian decided to do this. He just kills himself instead to distract Kylo so Rey can save everybody.
No. We'll never get it out now.
So certain are you?
Alright, I'll give it a try.
No. Try not. Do. Or do not. There is no try.
And now, as a ghost, he's raising it out of the water, which makes no sense on so many levels, and it's even more insulting for the fact that he's giving it to Rey. Bullshit. C-3PO informs everyone that he's picking up a signal from Luke Skywalker's X-Wing, and they find out that it's Rey and she's showing them the way there. The next scene is one of the most incredible examples of slipping in a retarded line just to justify future events. Finn says as long as the Star Destroyers are on the Sith planet, we can get them. And Rose says, because they can't activate their shields until they leave the atmosphere. And then Poe says, which is hard for ships that size because navigation can't tell which way is up. They all get a signal from a single navigation tower and we're gonna blow it up. I want you all to think for a second because this is a slap in the face to any functioning human being. This is clear evidence that this movie has no respect for the critical thinking skills of its audience and will squeeze in any line, no matter how embarrassingly stupid, just to get the scenes that they want, rather than take the time to actually write a logical, consistent story. It's just the laziest thing you can do, and they do it so fast that you don't notice. All the lights and all the bullshit is only here to distract you to how stupid this all is. Don't fall for it. We then get the most forced, cringy line of the movie. Mary, who's been waddling around in the background the whole movie, says, "We gotta pull some Hold'em maneuvers, do some real damage." And Finn brushes it off as 1 in a million. Another lazy way of dealing with the colossal plot hole created by The Last Jedi, which essentially ruined the logic of space battles forever. How could there be any suspense or immersion in these stupid space battles when Holdo just showed we can hyperdrive through anything? The First Order transfers the navigation signal to their main ship to help lead the fleet out, and Finn somehow immediately knows this. And the horse girl, who for some reason is still fucking here, says how? And he says, It's a feeling, obviously hinting something they haven't touched on since the first movie, that Finn is force sensitive. I didn't even catch this piece of bullshit on first watch, I just wanted it to end already. But this is a great example of what the force has become, just a lazy cop-up for shit that you don't want to take the time to write, when it was something so simple and so mysterious and so interesting in the past. Just say the Force did it. That's all you need to do. This is also another example of how John Boyega has got completely fucked by this trilogy. The character with the most built-in potential, a fresh young actor, utterly wasted, made into a joke, kidnapped and sexually harassed by Rose, then basically does nothing this entire movie. Even his true feelings for Rey, something I was curious about, was never revealed. I'm so sorry, John. Why'd they fucking waste your time? They land a carrier and they prepare to storm the ship. The First Order tries to jam their speeders, but to no avail because Finn's incredible plan to use space horses. If you need me to explain why this is retarded, you probably haven't been paying attention, and this is not the channel for you, so I'll just move on. It cuts back to Rey, who finally confronts Palpatine, who tells her he's been waiting a long time for his grandchild to come home, and he never wanted her dead, even though the first scene of this fucking movie was him sending Kylo to kill her. How do you put this in a movie? I don't understand. He says if she kills him, his spirit will pass into her, since all the Sith now live inside him. He opens the roof, and for the second time in this trilogy, they rip off the Jedi throne room scene. Kylo then shows up out of nowhere. No idea what he's been doing this whole time. I don't even know how he got there since Rey took his ship, but I'm genuinely happy to see him, since even being the most flip-floppity emotional wreck of a villain I've ever seen, he's still the most interesting character in this shit, and he's arguably carried this trilogy on his back. He deserves to have a part of this payoff. But before he can back up Rey, the Knights of Ren just appear out of thin air. They were chilling in some cave, even though the last time we saw them they were with Kylo. How do you put this in a movie? I don't understand. Kylo force pushes one of them and then basically gets beaten with sticks, since the Knights of Ren are just glorified stormtroopers with no guns. And Kylo, the same guy who was trained by Snoke and Luke, the same guy who can stop a laser blast in midair in The Force Awakens, is somehow outmatched. And in the best moment of the film, Palpatine says, "Do it," as Rey raises the lightsaber behind her to strike him down. But instead, she passes the lightsaber through the fucking Force to save Kylo, who was too stupid to bring his own. It doesn't matter what rules they break or problems they create, they will do absolutely anything for a cool visual. How can there possibly be any stakes or tension in these movies if Rey can heal people and fucking pass physical objects through the Force? This is the difference between a well-written, balanced magical system with clear rules and limitations, and a hack writer who just wants to wow the audience any way he can. Kylo does some weird cocky gesture, killing any form of suspense I might have had from this, similar to when Luke brushed off his shoulder in TLJ. And then Rey pulls out Leia's lightsaber and kills the guards that I didn't even notice were standing there. Choreography isn't always something that I want to nitpick, but this is Star Wars with the potential for high-level duels and amazing sequences, mixed in with creative uses of the Force, is a huge part of the reason we show up for this shit. But this fight is just another reminder of how lazy and telegraphed all these fights are. The days of Darth Maul are over. Palpatine absorbs Kylo and Rey and restores his power. Poe gives a defeated speech that has absolutely no weight to it, because we already saw in the fucking trailer that Lando arrives with 1,000,000 ships. We wouldn't have this issue if trailers stopped showing 95% of the movie. I have no idea where these guys were in the last movie, but like I said, The Last Jedi is clearly being ignored and mocked, so I guess it makes sense. Palpatine shoves Kylo into a bottomless pit, essentially booting him out of the fight, and then Force lightnings the entire resistance. Then Rey hears the voices of all the previous Jedi in her head, which gives her the strength to stand up. Before you get a chance to ask why the hell aren't the Force Ghosts helping, Palpatine flip-flops again on his plan and tries to kill her. It looks like Wolf was right.
Can you imagine? We have been going for months asking which character is going to be the most inconsistent. Turns out it's going to be Palpatine.
Rey is having a Dragon Ball Z style energy fight with Palpatine, who says Scavenger Girl is no match for him. Just one more reminder of how insane it is that she's this powerful. And while Kylo struggles in a fucking hole, Rey grabs the other lightsaber that she gave him, makes an X, and melts Palpatine's fucking face off, killing him. Which is what he wanted in the first place, so I have no idea. What does this mean? Did he win? Is it over?
He's definitely dead this time. A real victory, not that fake shit from episode 6. This is the real stuff.
And then Rey suddenly drops to her knees and dies. Apparently she's not immortal, I was wrong. And then Kylo pops up out of the hole, teaches himself the Force heal out of nowhere, and then somehow brings her back to life. And after trying to murder each other countless times, they fucking kiss, and all the Reylo fans around the world go wild. And I throw up in my mouth a little bit. I understand the concept of on-screen chemistry, but this relationship fucking makes no sense. Jon Snow and Daenerys was more believable than this, but because the maniacs online are so obsessed with the idea of these two together, they had to slip it in. And for reasons we will never know or understand, Kylo dies right after, even though fucking Rey had no consequences.
You know, what cost is there to heal? Because it doesn't cost Rey anything. She heals, and she's perfectly fine. But when Kylo heals, he kills himself. Because reasons, okay?
And with that, Kylo, the most botched villain of all time, is no more. I don't know what he wanted, I don't know why he did the things he did, but it was fun to watch while it lasted. He fades away into the Force, and then they show Leia's body do the same thing, meaning that they had her corpse sitting there for potentially days for no reason other than to have this shot. We get a big celebration scene including a bunch of Ewoks and falling Star Destroyers, and then it cuts to Rey on Tatooine. She goes to Luke Skywalker's old house that is somehow still standing, and then buries the two lightsabers in the sand. And then an old lady randomly walks by and says, "What's your name?" And if you thought I was joking about Rey being Space Jesus, you were wrong. We get a shot of Luke and Leia as Force ghosts, standing there just like Mary and Joseph. The reference is so forced and blatant, I couldn't believe they added this shit. And Rey, with the final dagger in the heart of this trilogy, tells the old lady she's Rey Skywalker. And the movie ends with her looking up at the twin sunsets, just like Luke. Rey identifies as a Skywalker. The end. So, what the fuck was the point of this trilogy? What did I just sit through? If you like this movie, if you enjoyed this trilogy, that's perfectly fine, because nobody can tell you how to feel about anything. But if you do, I seriously question your level of intelligence, because this trilogy only works if you genuinely don't think about anything. You have to literally pull out your brain and put it in your pocket, because a critical thought of any kind might ruin the experience. Videos like this and many others are extremely important, so you can remove your feelings from the equation, put down the nostalgia glasses for a second, and get some understanding for why so many people, including myself, think this is the worst, most botched trilogy of all time. To take these films seriously is to essentially make the original trilogy pointless, because it destroys all the characters and everything they accomplish in order to prop up this new story. Do you understand this? Palpatine being alive is the equivalent to making a new Lord of the Rings sequel, bringing back the ring with no explanation even though we all saw it get destroyed, just so Frodo's granddaughter can go on a mission to destroy it. And instead of going on a perilous journey to test the very fiber of her being, she destroys the ring in just a few days by herself, because girls can do it too. In an attempt to make a female icon, you have ended up creating the worst protagonist I've ever seen. We have seen so many incredible female characters that became iconic. But with Rey, you tried to make a perfect female icon. But you forgot to write a fucking character. Rey's only attribute is perfection. George Lucas provided an outline for the entire sequel trilogy, and you stabbed him in the fucking back for this? This soulless, creatively retarded mess of a trilogy? You took every chance you could to ignore the things that we actually cared to see, just to squeeze in your identity politics, because that's so much more important than storytelling and character development, right? As long as you can pander to the right crowds and you can sell merchandise, then it was successful. Quality just doesn't matter. You disrespected millions of fans to try to make your own. You created a product that is only acceptable for people who don't have a single critical thought in their head. People who wander through life reacting to shit, clapping at whatever they see without a single understanding of quality, and eat up everything as long as it has enough CGI and one-liners. As long as people accept this bullshit, we will continue to get more horribly written movies, more shitty reboots and crappy soulless sequels that fundamentally don't even understand why the franchises were popular in the first place. Luke Skywalker's story showed us the complications of relationships. It showed us the lessons of failure, the power of optimism, the benefits of hard training, the strength of family bonds. It gave us universal lessons that we can take with us forever, no matter who you are. What the fuck does Rey's journey teach us? She literally has a cheat code for life. What is there to learn from Rey? Seriously, to not worry about a thing because everything will be handed to you? That you're perfect from the beginning and you don't have to learn from anyone? Or what, to let your boyfriend abuse you as long as you think he's complicated? She went from wanting to avenge Han Solo to putting the entire Resistance life on the line to save Kylo. What the fuck kind of character is this? The idiots online ate this shit up, and now a romance that makes no fucking sense on any level became the heart of this trilogy, when we had so many amazing characters, new and old, to flesh out. What an absolute disgrace. What a waste of fucking time. Thank you, Disney, for baiting my nostalgia. Thank you for insulting my intelligence. And most importantly, thank you for ruining a story that I loved since I was a child. Fuck you.
Finn, it's too late. Don't do this.
No! I won't let them win!
No! Finn! Slip to the ball! We have to retreat!
I saved you. Tell me. That's how we're gonna win. Not fighting what we hate. Saving what we love.